Alrighty, everybody. Let's hop into a game and let's see how things go today. It's been a while since I've done just a regular, typical, a rapid game, but more of a traditional kind of game for me, games that I normally play. So let's try one of these 10 plus 5s and see where we end up. Alrighty, so we are hopping right in. Let's go ahead and lead off with our D-pawn. See if we can get into our Queen's Gambit type lines that we like. Oh. Don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I'll go ahead and take the first gambit. If he offers a second one, I'm going to decline it. I'm not going to go crazy trying to hold on to that pawn, to be honest with you. I don't want to get into a mood of chasing material, right? So I'm up a pawn, but I know that this is a weakness, and I'm probably going to let it go. What do I want to do next? If he captures, I can go here. He'll probably go here. So the question is, do I just capture? I'm just going to send it. I don't know. I'm just going to send it. Normally I would push e4 all the way up, but my opponent has that defended already. So he's going to go ahead and develop his bishop that way. I am going to put my bishop right here and then bring it back. The idea being that right now I'm cutting off his castling. So I'm okay with all of this. I'm going to bring my knight around here. I do want to be a little cautious of this particular pawn push. All right, so what has my opponent got lined up? There is an alignment issue. He's castled queenside. Okay. So we now have opposite side castling. What does that mean? That means that I am going to start sending my pawns storming up this side. My opponent's probably going to start sending his pawns storming down this side. The only reason I'm running this guy down the board is, again, I'm still up a pawn. So he has 1-2 attackers on it. I've got 1-2 defenders on it. So he can't really capture just yet. One of his is the queen, so that's just too much of a valuable piece to throw away. And I'm just going to keep sending it. I need to be careful of this. So I want to get some extra protection here, but right now, right, we've got some material imbalance that I would like to take advantage of. Not material imbalance, a board position imbalance. I still would really like to start pushing these pawns. Like, that's my goal, right? My next goal, yeah. All right, so how about we start here? This is coming next. This is a no. This is a no. I am not taking here because I do not want to open up this outside file. If he were to come here with check, what would I do? So my queen is defended. It is in line with their queen, but at least that would be a fair queen trade. It's not winning material, but that's okay. Mostly I'm concerned about what happens if my opponent comes here, puts me in check. Do I want to give up? Do I want to expose my king this early? And right now I don't. So if he comes here, I'm probably just going to move. So I'm double checking here. I've got a fork. If my opponent captures here, I have this covered. And then he can run with his bishop somewhere. I didn't want to lose that light square bishop, but I'm going to take the risk of grabbing material here. So this is still a threat. That's what that was for, having the knights defending each other. Now this does give me an option to take back, so there's really not too much of a scare here. I really need to get my dark square bishop out, though. I gotta get my bros connected. All right, so how do we start to defend this particular pawn? Because I'm assuming my opponent's going to align here. If he aligns here, then I take, and we just make a queen trade. Here's an alignment issue I'd like to take advantage of. I have a couple options. My first thought is en passant. Right, this was my free pawn anyway, so I'm giving it back. Now my opponent can grab it either way they want. Oh, I guess he could grab... No, he can't grab that way. That's pinned. Ah, this is not protected. So I'm up a piece that I would like to take advantage of, but I forgot that... Oh no, that's deadly. That is deadly. That is very, very, very deadly. Because this falls now. This is trouble. This is big time trouble. Big time trouble here, friends. Because now the queen is infiltrated, I'm cut off here, so I'm thinking I might have to jump up. If I go down, then this rook comes with check, and that might be checkmate. So I have to go up. Now he's going to slide this rook over, which is going to give me... Oh, no, it's not. I lose the queen. And I'm still getting checkmated. Even worse, I'm losing the rook too. This falls apart, and this all falls apart. There it goes. I have nothing left. We drop here, and that's the game. That is the game. That's pinned. He can pick up here. That's a resign. Oh, that sucks, because that was a close game right up until that last point. Let me... Do I have time for a rematch? We'll try a rematch. We'll see what we get. We'll try a rematch. What the hell, right? We'll try it. So we had the white pieces before. Now we're going to have the black pieces. I've noticed a lot of players in my rating level lead off with e4, e5. You know, in e4, e5 opening. We got an Italian game. I'm going to go with... I'm trying a different opening on the Italian game. I'm trying this particular moveset. All right, so next up I'm looking at squares now. So that's the goal, is look at squares. So this particular square has 1, 2, 3 defenders of it, and I only have one attacker on that square. So my opponent has control of the D5 square. What about the D4 square? My opponent has one defender of the D4 square. I have one attacker of it. I can't get to the D4 square without going through the D5 square, though. So let us... Now that this pawn is pushed... Well, I guess my opponents could still push another pawn. Ah, it took with the bishop. Okay. Rotate the knight back up to here. We have an option to take his bishop. My bishop is now super exposed, and I'd like to get it back into the game somewhere. All right, but now when we look at the D5 square, I have 1, 2. He has 1, 2 as well. Okay. And I can always push. Let's see, captures. And then I get the open file for my rook, or the semi-open file at this time for my rook. I mean, yes, my rook, my bishop is coming right back to b6. So, I mean, my bishop's coming right back, but yeah, so my opponent's looking for this thing again. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like this thing. I was supposed to have rotated my knight up and around so that my queen could participate in that game. Is there anything I want to do? Yeah, this is all I want to do. Once again, I'm behind on development, though. You notice I still have a bishop to get involved in the game, and my opponent is fully developed. So I have a little bit of work to do. So my opponent is threatening checkmate. Is there another way to defend this checkmate? No, because my knight's in the way. I want my knight here. But now he just rotates up to here. That is an interesting turn of events. I can't do that because that pawn is overloaded. All right, so let's start with this. Right? Because if I go here to deflect this bishop, then captures, I drop a whole knight, because this pawn is defending both the knight and the bishop in that line. This is defended. So this is the piece that's undefended for my opponent. I have to take with the queen because I have to leave this pawn here defending this knight. All right, so there are a couple lines here that we have to explore. Number one, what happens if they take? I've got a little bit of time. So they take, I take with the queen, force a queen trade. I end up with pawns in this structure. My rook is loose. Maybe. Or if I take here, my opponent will take back with the queen. And then he's got a queen here. My pawn structure stays intact. So the question is, do I deal with 3 pawns like this, or do I immediately start going after the loose pawn in the center of the board? I'm going to try going after the loose pawn in the center of the board. So that's my target, knowing that my opponent could easily capture here, right? So do I have enough defenders here? If captures, then my opponent would capture back. So no, I need this. So let's go ahead and make this trade. Have to be really careful. I have to be really careful leaving my queen exposed. So does my opponent, but notice this is all tied up. I have access to this particular pawn here is what I'm looking for. And now I have 2 attackers. My opponent has 2 defenders. More importantly, I can push my D pawn, and this pawn is pinned. I drop down here, though. So is there any way to save? There is not. There's no way to save this pawn. Yes, there is. Because if my opponent takes here, he drops a rook. So now we've got a little bit of a lead, right? Now, can we wiggle? Keeping the pressure on this particular pawn. Again, the idea that I keep putting my queen here is that if we make this exchange, yeah. So my opponent has this square covered, so going for a position like this is not going to help me right now. But I'm going to go ahead and exchange a pair of rooks. That keeps an eye on the lead pawn, which is what I definitely want to do. He's going to grab here. Aha! He did not grab there. So that gives me a chance to defend this pawn somehow. Let's start here. So he can grab this one. I don't have access to this. But now I might be able to set up this particular exchange because I win a pawn at the end of the day. So I have this defended. And then if I bring the queen here, I'll have two attackers right along that line. Yep, perfect. Actually, I can grab here because that guy's pinned. Capture, capture. Yeah. So now it's 4 pawns to 2, and I've got to figure out how to get a mating net going. This comes with check. Is that helpful at all? I don't know. All right, so here we go, end games. Can I work an end game? No idea. Sorry, I'm trying to concentrate without overstepping my bounds. 2 or 1? I think 2 is fine. That's defended. Whew. So, sorry about that, guys. I created a block. My opponent, my pawns create a wall, and my opponent is trapped. So, all right, just telling my opponent, thanks for the game, well played. That was interesting. Sorry, I'm so sorry I got so quiet here at the very end, guys. But this end game was just a bit challenging for me, and I wanted to kind of see how I could do it. Make sure that I paid attention to the little things, and whew, we got it there in the end. My heart is just a pounding, woo! All right, so this was just a standard Italian game. I went with this very passive move with the bishop to e7. Probably not necessary because my opponent has not pushed out here. But the idea is that if they push here and drive down and my knight's here, right, so let's say we get this position. Now, you know, capturing, I don't have to worry about... I'm just making up moves as I go along here, guys. I don't have to worry about this. So now my opponent has 1, 2 attackers, and I have 1, 2 defenders. No, I have to give up my king security. So now we can do it. We can do be a whole lot of trades in this position. So you get a lot of crazy trades that happen in the middle, and I'm just not. If my bishop were not here, notice if my bishop were not here, that line. Let me go here. If we do this line, right? Hot and hot and hot and hot and hot. Now we're in a position where my opponent has 2 attackers and my 2 defenders. The only 2 defenders I have is the queen. And so captures, let's say I do something like, yeah, my knight is pinned, so I can't capture. I can't initiate that transfer anymore. The best I can hope for is nothing, really. So if I make a move, then we see a capture. I'd have to capture back, and then my opponent could... What do they do from here? I forget what they do from here. Is it capture? No. Yeah, knight captures is the main line, and then G captures, and then bishop here, right. And so now I've compromised my king safety. I have to move my rook out of the way. Yeah, I mean, it can go, yeah, there we go. Get the knight out of the way, the queen can come down with check and drive down. That's almost a guaranteed checkmate, actually. Yeah, because this at least doesn't come with check. Oops, not that. Never mind, not that. Don't do that. Anyway, so Sorry for the rambling, but that's the idea. Is I just want to avoid some of that kind of confusion that can happen on the Italian game. So this is a very passive move, a very defensive move. The whole idea is to prevent your opponent's bishop from being aggressive. So I'm trying it out. I can't say that I'm in love with it yet, but it's something I'm interested in trying. The rest of this game is pretty standard. We can turn on the engine, but the rest of the game is pretty standard stuff. Yeah, I am giving up this pawn. My opponent probably should have just straight up taken that pawn. I could have retreated all the way down here and defended the pawn at the same time, but... Now this pawn, everything's defended, everything feels good. Okay, the engine says I should have taken with the rook. All right. Maybe perhaps because push and then capture, and then I push past and I open up an attack on the knight. Maybe? I don't know. Yeah, this is a massive snafu here on my part. Yeah. This comes with an attack on the queen. Or he could have even gone this way, I think, right? And that still comes with an attack on my queen, so I got to move out of the way. What does the engine say? Where do I move to? Queen f6. That happens with check. I mean, this is an ugly position, isn't it? Ugly, ugly, ugly. So, yeah, so you could see how this can get really ugly, allowing the queen to infiltrate down here like this. That's why this knight, when the knight is on f6, that's why it's so important, because it stops these shenanigans. And without it, things can get kind of hairy. There's really not a good way to defend, because again, if I do a dumb move, anything, right, this is immediate checkmate, so we have to defend against that. This really surprised me, my opponent going back. I don't know what their plan was here. I mean, if they're worried about me capturing, I'm just opening up a line down here. I don't know. But this really surprised me that my opponent decided to go backwards. And you could see the evaluation. That was almost a six or so plus point swing in my favor, because that allowed me to get into position to add some extra defense here. Oh, this is pinned. Oh! I miss things all the time, guys. All the time I miss things. Yeah, this is where I felt like it swung back into my favor. But you could see, wow, there was some scary stuff happening there. And thankfully my opponent missed it. Yeah, and the engine says grabbing here is a smart move. Oops, phooey. Didn't hate my rook lift. I think my opponent's goal with these rook moves was just to maybe see if he can get a draw out of it. You know, winning the first game and then drawing the second, my opponent would claim victory, right, on the matches. You know, he won from the black side and then he drew from the white side. Like, that's a happy day for him. The fact that we each won from the black side, it goes to show you never know, right? So yeah, at this point in time, the engine says I'm up because I've stolen 2 free pawns. I'm looking at this, and again, the idea here is if my opponent were to make a different move, let's say something like this, I can capture. If my opponent captures, I've got that. And so I've now picked up a 3rd pawn, and my opponent now has some trouble that they have to do. Yeah, we could pin the rook to the king. Probably get my other rook up and over. Something along those lines. Or maybe even... yeah, I would love to pin the rook from way down here somewhere. Nope, not that. Another free pawn, maybe. I don't know. But that was the goal, was to keep an eye on this rook and this pawn at the same time, and just unable to swing it. So then I went for this pawn. Yeah, it did allow my opponent to infiltrate. Yeah, I felt that the engine doesn't like this move, but I felt like it was good to get this pair of rooks off the board. The queens are still on the board, so it's still a dangerous zone. A danger zone? Okay, yeah, I could see this. That would have been okay. And then start pushing my outside pawn. So even if I push the outside pawn, you just pick up here, right? Then what? I don't know. The goal here of getting the rook down was, yeah, cleaning up down here. And I should have, back here, I should have left my queen there. Oh, interesting. That's a danger I did not see. Okay. Because it comes with check. And then my opponent gets back in the game. Interesting. Okay. All right, and then, yeah, I should have left my queen here, honestly. Because then I could have gone for this route, but that's all right. That's no big deal. All right, and then the rest of the game you guys saw, so we'll just leave it at that. We got the checkmate by pushing our pawns. This probably could have been a lot better, but the whole goal here was to either trap my opponent's king. He still has some pawns to push, so it's not a stalemate, and he's got a rook that he can wiggle back and forth, so it'll never be a stalemate. But trap my opponent's king into a situation where I could get my rook, cut him off, or circle my king around, which would be very difficult with my opponent's rook. But at least cut off my opponent's king so that I can push my pawn. But it just so happened that we were able to trap him, and 4 pawns is just a lot of pawns. And by coming forward like he did, unfortunately, blundered the game. He should have gone backwards and allowed me to get some pushes. Now, I probably would have stayed back here. But see, now this becomes a weird endgame. See, this would be a hard endgame to win. I don't know enough about rook and king versus rook and king. I don't know enough about that, so that would be something I'd have to learn. But either way. And then let's go take a quick look at... Man, this video's running long, guys. I'm sorry. Let's go take a quick look at the previous game. View games. So here's where I resigned, and yeah, I am not at all happy with how this game went. It started off okay, but yeah, immediately I don't know this England Gambit. I don't know this at all. Most people capture. The engine says capture, so I took knight f3, so that's the most common move. Yeah, the engine set, or the database says that white has a tiny, tiny advantage in these 15,000 games that have been played. Yep, and keep capturing. Or even e4. Yeah, I don't know. And now it's about even if white has a tiny, tiny, tiny disadvantage in the games they played. Knight c3. That's not the move I made. Yeah, Yeah, I don't know this opening at all, and at this point in time, I was outside a book from move one, so I don't know what to do. We're still in a database, so there is a database game where this is played. A pair of 1600s. Yeah, from move 9, we're in a brand new game, but I'm way outside, and then this opposite side castling. Yeah, this pawn push was a mistake. So this is really where the my theory of what I wanted to happen, where it 100% broke down. So my goal was to push this pawn all the way up to just take advantage of the fact that I have defenders all along here, right? So my pawn is sufficiently defended in almost all scenarios, and it's a free pawn. So I'm looking to give back material, which is not exactly what's happening here, but I'm looking to use that extra pawn to it's a free pawn. So I'm going to push it as far as I can, you know, maybe chase my opponent's pieces onto some bad squares, but that was a bad philosophy. The better philosophy should have been what I said from the beginning. Use my outside pawns, now that we've castled opposite, use my outside pawns and start pushing pawns up the board, right? So my pawn storm here on the queen side, because my opponent's castled on this side, now I'm starting to make, you know, make a plan. Where would this knight have to go? Yeah, so the knight has a couple squares still that it could retreat to. So yeah, I guess capture. Oh, then the knight could capture with an attack on my bishop immediately. That's still undefended. Yeah, I don't know. So this would be this first game we played. I don't know it at all. I don't know what I was supposed to do. So from here on out, from the very first move, I'm just guessing. And I haven't played enough of these games to know how to guess. And yeah, it was pretty clear my opponent had a much better game plan than I did. I did not know what to do, let alone how to execute it. And I think that's the difference. If I had known, like if I had stuck with my plan of what to do, you know, then I could have, you know, followed this through. But this idea of just continually pushing this pawn ended up not working out at all. So it was a neat idea, but you can see immediately, as soon as I push it, the engine hates it. And from here on out, I think that, yeah, black just gets more and more advantage. And unfortunately, my opponent did not take advantage of that, but it could have. And yeah, just... See, it says white has an advantage because I have that extra piece, but I just could not convert. Yeah, and like I said, over the board, like I said, my number one concern, once this happened, I didn't see it at all over the board, but I have a 3-point advantage. That drops to 9, -9 almost. So it's the equivalent of basically giving up my queen for free. And allowing this infiltration absolutely wrecked everything I have, because these rooks are already spying down on me. They've got mostly open files to work with. Yeah, from here, I should have check, trade queens. Yeah, and then use my material advantage at that point. Actually, I would go on this. Ah, right, don't want to drop that pawn. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, all right, so I'll quit fooling around now, guys. This was a long one, but it was 2 matches in one, 2 games in one. So this was a full match. This was interesting. I don't know this particular opening style. That's okay. But then the other game I felt pretty strong about, and we had some fun with it. So keep playing chess. this is another twofer. Sorry it's so long, but I appreciate you guys sticking with me, and hope to catch you guys in the next one. Bye.